Hello, I'm Garrett. At 28, I reside in a bustling metropolis. I'm not going to soften the blow. My job may not be the most exciting, but it covers my expenses, and that's what truly counts. I spend my days in a warehouse, handling boxes, and overseeing inventory management. It's demanding labor, and it can be tiring, yet it keeps me active. Regardless, my purpose here isn't to discuss that. What I truly wish to share is the story of how I encountered her. It was an ordinary afternoon, much like countless others, as I made my way to the cafe just down the street from my workplace to grab a bite to eat. I often visit that place to refresh my mind and escape the daily hustle. The atmosphere buzzed with activity, as it often did, while I lingered in line, aimlessly flicking through my phone. That was the moment I laid eyes on her. She sat solitary at a table by the window, her gaze locked onto the pages of a book, yet there was an undeniable quality about her that captured attention. It wasn't solely her appearance, though she was undeniably breathtaking. It was the manner in which she presented herself that truly captivated. Serene, self-assured, and slightly enigmatic. I'm not typically the type to initiate spontaneous dialogues, yet that day held a certain magic in the atmosphere. There was an undeniable urge within me to approach her and express my thoughts. Indeed, I followed through. I approached with a sense of nonchalance, inquiring if the seat opposite her was available. She glanced away from her book, momentarily taken aback, and then broke into a smile. The atmosphere was inviting, sincere. Her refusal was the only encouragement I required. I settled in, sensing a slight unease, yet I persevered through it. Our conversation began with the book she was immersed in, and from that point, it effortlessly unfolded. We established a shared understanding quite swiftly. It appears we share a mutual appreciation for the same genres of music and film. I even succeeded in delivering a few jokes, and she found them amusing. That seemed like a positive indication, didn't it? The dialogue flowed smoothly, naturally, a sensation I hadn't felt in quite some time. I recall a moment when time seemed to stretch, the clamor of the cafe receding into the distance, leaving only the significance of the bond we were forging. We engaged in conversation for roughly 30 minutes, perhaps even longer, until it dawned on me that I needed to return to my responsibilities. However, prior to my departure, I engaged in an action that is not typical for me. I requested her number. To be honest, I didn't see that coming from her. I thought, what do I really have to lose? Yet, as she inscribed it on a napkin and passed it to me, my heart raced with excitement. She smiled once more and said, "Let's chat soon." I stepped out of that cafe, a sense of weightlessness enveloping me. It was uncharacteristic of me to act with such audacity, yet there was something about her that compelled me to seize the moment. That evening, she occupied my thoughts endlessly. Kayla, I had come to know her name. I replayed the dialogue repeatedly in my mind, attempting to discern whether I had said something foolish, whether I had ruined it. Yet, as I pondered further, it became clear to me that our conversation had brought me genuine pleasure. The following day, I reached out to her via text. I aimed to strike a balance between enthusiasm and patience, not wanting to appear overly eager while also avoiding unnecessary delays. I began with a light approach, expressing how pleasant it was to meet her and my desire to have another conversation in the future. I pressed send and then fixated on my phone, anticipating a reply. It seemed to stretch on endlessly. At last, my phone has given out. Her response was straightforward. It was truly a pleasure to meet you as well. How about we meet for coffee soon? That was all it took for my heart to perform a joyful little jig. We shared a moment together. Somewhat. It may not have been an official date, yet it carried the essence of a beginning. I felt a surge of enthusiasm. Feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. I won't deceive you. In the days that followed, she lingered in my thoughts, an unshakable presence. I found myself envisioning the various possibilities of how events could unfold. Imagining the experience of deepening my understanding of her. Our conversations grew increasingly frequent, with messages flowing between us. She appeared relatable, humorous, and truly engaged in learning more about me. There was an undeniable pull towards her presence. With each conversation, my anticipation for our next meeting grew stronger. I sensed that this had potential, and I was determined not to ruin it. I decided to embrace the opportunity. I invited her to join me for a proper date. It wasn't an action I typically engaged in. As I stepped into the restaurant, I found myself making an effort to soothe my nerves. I aimed to strike a balance, not wanting to appear on the verge of fainting from anxiety, yet also trying to avoid coming off as overly nonchalant about the situation. I endeavored to strike a harmonious equilibrium. Maintain your posture, take a deep breath, and try to stay still. I came with the intention to dazzle, yet also to savor the evening. I wished for her to find joy in it as well. The hostess welcomed me warmly and guided me to the table I had booked. I selected a place by the window, anticipating it would create the perfect atmosphere. I had my doubts about what I might find, yet I thought a glimpse of the city lights could be worthwhile. The entire evening was meant to be something extraordinary, wasn't it? I endeavored to ensure that every detail was precise. As I settled into my seat, I took a quick look at my phone to confirm that I hadn't misjudged the time. I haven't received any message from Kayla yet. She was likely behind schedule. I have always been the kind of person who arrives early, particularly when I feel anxious about leaving a positive impression. However, I recall reading that arriving a bit late could add to the allure of the occasion. I made an effort to remain calm about it. The eatery exuded a serene ambience, enveloped in a warm and inviting atmosphere. The candlelight danced gently on the table, creating delicate shadows, while a subtle hum of background music infused the atmosphere with a cozy sophistication. It seemed like the perfect setting for sharing a moment with someone dear, as if I was silently conveying her significance in my life. 15 minutes later, she appeared before my eyes. She entered, adorned in a dress that was both understated and graceful, enhancing her beauty beyond what I recalled. My heart raced with excitement. It was difficult to articulate, yet there was an undeniable quality in the way she presented herself. Assured, elegant, and naturally captivating. She noticed me right away and smiled, a smile that brought a sense of harmony to everything around us. I rose abruptly, perhaps a bit too abruptly, and she chuckled gently, remarking, "You're adorable when you're anxious." A wave of exhilaration washed over me, as if I had been discovered in the midst of something thrilling, yet entirely delightful. Apologies, I lost my train of thought, attempting to regain my composure. I aim to ensure you weren't kept waiting for too long. She dismissed it with a casual wave, as though it held no significance for her. There's no need to be concerned. I'm truly pleased that we were able to bring this to fruition. She surveyed her surroundings, a look of admiration crossing her face as she took in the restaurant's ambience. It was clear she was putting on a front, pretending not to be impressed, yet the sparkle in her eyes betrayed her true feelings, which lifted my spirits just a bit. We settled in, and once the initial tension faded, the conversation began to unfold effortlessly. We discussed a myriad of topics. The experiences we share, the memories of our youth, the melodies that resonate with us, the dates that didn't go as planned. The dialogue flowed effortlessly, and as the evening progressed, I sensed a growing connection between us. Each laugh, each smile, each small remark made me wonder if this could truly become something genuine. The dinner unfolded seamlessly, even beyond expectations. We began with a selection of appetizers, followed by our main courses. We took our time with everything, and in a way, despite being new to each other, the moments seemed to expand endlessly. It was one of those instances when everything else blurs into insignificance, and the only thing that holds significance is the individual facing you. As we wrapped up our meal, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was developing feelings for her. It was difficult to acknowledge, yet it was undeniably the case. There was an undeniable charm in the way she gazed at me when she smiled, the attentive way she listened, and the effortless ease she brought to everything around her. The night felt too precious to let go, yet I was aware that its conclusion was inevitable. After dinner, we chose to go for a stroll. The air outside was crisp, carrying a refreshing chill that invigorated the senses. As we wandered along the street, our conversation flowed effortlessly, and it felt like everything was unfolding just right. We weren't in a hurry to understand one another, yet the chemistry between us was unmistakable. We were both aware of it, even if the words remained unspoken. Eventually, we found ourselves at a park close to the restaurant. The trees shimmered with gentle illumination, and the night exuded a serene tranquility. We settled onto a bench, engaged in conversation, and I could sense my heart quickening once more. I was uncertain about her feelings, yet there was an undeniable sensation in my chest that suggested we shared a mutual understanding. Our conversation flowed for hours, and as the evening unfolded, it seemed as though we transcended the typical boundaries of a simple date. It seemed as though we were forging a profound connection. I began to share thoughts and feelings that had remained unspoken for quite some time. Reflections on my journey, my aspirations, my anxieties. She absorbed my words, and when our gazes met, I recognized a deep comprehension reflected in her eyes. It was the sort of moment that led me to ponder, perhaps this is the culmination. Perhaps this is the individual I have been searching for. As the evening waned, I accompanied her to her car, and we lingered there for a moment, silence enveloping us both. An unvoiced tension lingered in the atmosphere, thick and brimming with potential. Uncertainty clouded my mind regarding her thoughts, yet an undeniable feeling washed over me. This was a moment destined to linger in my memory for years to come. She glanced my way and offered a warm smile. "I appreciate your company this evening, Garrett. I truly had a wonderful time." "Same here," I remarked, struggling to suppress the smile that was on the verge of breaking free. We lingered for a moment longer, gazing into each other's eyes, and I could sense my heart racing. In a moment of spontaneity, I leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't an intense kiss, just a gentle, tender kiss, the sort that conveyed all the unspoken feelings you needed to understand. As I drew back, her smile was infectious, and I found myself unable to resist returning it. "I'll message you when I arrive home," she said, as she settled into her car. "I will be waiting," I responded, still attempting to make sense of all that had just unfolded. She drove away, leaving me momentarily rooted in place, gazing at the vacant parking space. Thoughts surged through my mind, yet my heart brimmed with warmth. The night unfolded flawlessly. Uncertainty loomed ahead, yet a thrill coursed through me. I was filled with anticipation at the thought of seeing her again. What I had yet to realize was that I was on the brink of becoming entangled in a situation far more intricate than I could have ever anticipated. The days following our initial encounter seemed to pass in a haze. An intriguing haze. The kind that greets you in the morning with a sense of buoyancy, where spontaneous smiles emerge at unexpected times, and you find yourself revisiting small, cherished moments in your thoughts. Her laughter in response to my silly jokes. The manner in which she tucked her hair behind her ear during moments of contemplation. The gaze she cast my way as we exchanged our goodnights lingered in the air. I was captivated. Our texting frequency increased. Not merely the standard greetings or inquiries about the day, although we engaged in those as well, but rather the type of dialogues that made time fade away. She shared whimsical tales from her youth, while I recounted the peculiar happenings I'd encountered at my job. I caught myself glancing at my phone more frequently, anticipating the moment her name would appear, and each time it did, a familiar thrill surged in my chest. A couple of days later, I extended another invitation to her. This time, I opted for a more straightforward approach. No upscale dining establishment. Take your time. A leisurely stroll through the city, pausing for a cup of coffee at a charming little cafe I enjoy. She consented immediately. Upon seeing her once more, she exuded that same effortless allure, that same self-assuredness that captivated me effortlessly. We meandered through the city streets in the afternoon, engaging in conversations that danced between profound topics and the trivial. She mentioned that she once painted, but it had been quite a while since she last picked up a brush. I shared with her my long-held desire to master a dish more intricate than pasta, yet I've always struggled with the patience required. She chuckled and promised that she would show me someday. That particular day lingered in my memory. It sparked thoughts of a future filled with more shared moments. I kept it to myself, but my heart was undeniably drawn to her. Challenging. Yet another date. Yet another link. We continued to meet regularly. 1 week went by, followed by another. Every encounter surpassed the previous one. We visited the cinema, enjoyed late-night drives, found ourselves caught in the rain one time, and ended up sitting in my car for an hour, simply conversing. It seemed effortless. It seemed effortless. As if we had been acquainted for an eternity. On a particular evening, she extended an invitation for me to come to her home. It's not a big deal. Simply an evening of films. Her apartment exuded warmth, adorned with charming personal details. A collection of books resting on a coffee table. Several canvases propped up against the wall. I identified her style through her vivid description. A blanket lay over the couch, which she kept adjusting absent-mindedly as our conversation flowed. We were near each other, yet maintained a comfortable distance. Initially, midway through the film, I sensed her resting her head on my shoulder. My heart raced, yet I made an effort to remain composed. I remained still. Didn't even take a deep breath. I allowed the moment to envelop us. Gradually, I shifted my gaze in her direction. She gazed at me, and in that still moment we shared, a change occurred. I failed to consider. I simply leaned in. The kiss lingered gently, unfolding in a deliberate rhythm, as if we were both savoring the essence of the moment, etching it into our memories. As we drew away, her smile had a way of sending butterflies fluttering in my stomach. "Text, I was hoping you'd do that," she admitted, and I chuckled, realizing I had been wishing for the same thing. That evening, I returned home with a singular certainty in my mind. I found myself immersed. The unwavering sensation. All appeared to be flawless. Nearly flawless. There were subtle details, fleeting instances that caused a flicker of unease within me, yet I dismissed them. There was a moment of pause when I called her name. As though she had momentarily lost track of her obligation to reply. Or how, when we encountered one of her friends at a coffee shop, the friend appeared taken aback for a brief moment before smiling and saying, "Oh, hey," as if she were concealing something. I observed. However, I did not inquire. What would be the reason for that? I felt a sense of joy. Her presence brought me joy. Reflecting on it now, it was clear I should have seen it coming. I ought to have inquired. The truth was approaching, relentless and unavoidable, regardless of my preparedness. The following morning, I awoke with a persistent warmth nestled in my chest. Last night was nothing short of perfection. A night so enchanting it erased the existence of everything beyond our own little universe. The manner in which she gazed at me. Her laughter in response to my silly jokes. Her kiss lingered, slow and intentional, as if every moment held significance. I found myself immersed. Absolutely certain. In the weeks that followed, circumstances continued to improve. We began to share more moments, our lives intertwining in a way that felt effortless. She would send me a message in the morning just to check in. Reach out to me in the evening to share the details of her day. She would unexpectedly cross my mind at various times. In the office, behind the wheel, or even during the most mundane tasks. I convinced myself that this was the moment. This was the essence of falling in love. However, small details began to bother me. It was nothing significant. Only a few moments. A moment of uncertainty lingered as I uttered her name. A glimmer of something in her eyes when I mentioned a memory from one of our outings. It was as if she hesitated, uncertain whether it was something she was meant to recall. Once, we unexpectedly encountered her friend at a coffee shop. Her friend appeared taken aback, as if she hadn't anticipated our presence together. And then there appeared the most peculiar one. There was an inexplicable element that eluded my understanding. One evening, we found ourselves at a quaint Italian restaurant, engaging in conversation and sharing laughter, just as we always did. In the midst of our dinner, she unexpectedly inquired, "So, could you remind me once more, how did we come to meet?" I furrowed my brow, a soft chuckle slipping out. Could you clarify what you mean? She smiled as if she were trying to downplay it. Could you please repeat that for me? Your storytelling captivates me. I recounted to her the story of the cafe, how our paths crossed, and the moment I asked for her number. She chuckled at all the appropriate times, yet an unsettling feeling lingered. As if she were merely a passive observer of the tale. As if she required the nudge. I chose to overlook it. I reassured myself that I was just overanalyzing. Yet, beneath the surface, there was an unsettling dissonance. The instant it resonated. A few days later, everything began to unravel. We envisioned a straightforward outing, merely a stroll through the park. The sun dipped below the horizon, the cool air enveloped us, and she stood by my side. Her arm intertwined with mine. Yet, there was an unmistakable shift in the air. She seemed more subdued than normal, lost in thought. At one moment, I noticed her gaze fixed on me, as if she were weighing a decision. Are you all right? I inquired. She gave a slight nod. Indeed, just pondering. She didn't mention what it was about. I refrained from pressing. As we strolled by a quaint bench, she exhaled deeply and came to a halt. Garrett, there's something I must share with you. My stomach churned. She appeared anxious, her fingers toying with the fabric of her sweater sleeve. There's a secret you're unaware of. The atmosphere surrounding us seemed altered. Denser, weightier. What is it exactly? I inquired with caution in my voice. She paused, then ultimately uttered the words that sent my heart racing against my chest. My name is not Kayla. For a moment, I believed I had misunderstood. Excuse me? She took a deep breath. Amaya. Stillness. The surroundings faded into a haze, as if I had been abruptly pulled from the fabric of reality. I gazed at her, attempting to comprehend the words that had just reached my ears. Could you clarify what you mean? My voice hardly resembled my own. I'm her twin sister, she murmured gently. I am not Kayla. It was as if the very earth beneath my feet had been violently torn away. I remained motionless, gazing at her as if she had uttered words in a tongue foreign to me. Is that her twin sister? The words seemed to drift away, as if they were failing to resonate completely. I revisited each moment in my mind. The memory of our first date, those late-night conversations that seemed to stretch on forever, and the way her eyes sparkled when I called her name linger in my mind. In an instant, everything I had overlooked, every minute detail that seemed insignificant, surged over me like a tidal wave. This was not Kayla. This was Maya. I released a tremulous sigh. What do you mean you aren't Kayla? My tone was sharper than I meant it to be. She cast her gaze downward, nervously toying with the edge of her sleeve, steering clear of my eyes. I truly mean that. I am not her. I was never that. A harsh chuckle slipped from my lips. Not due to its humor, but because it was the sole action my body was capable of performing. Then who on earth have I been seeing? She gazed at me then, her eyes brimming with an emotion I couldn't fully identify. Remorse? Perhaps? Melancholy? Remorse? You've been in a relationship with me, Garrett. Only I swept my fingers through my hair, feeling a constriction in my chest. Excuse me? The words scarcely escaped my mouth. What would compel you to take this action? What would motivate Kayla? I held back. Hold on. Is she aware? Maya paused, and in that brief moment, she instinctively understood the answer. Absolutely. I let out a quick breath, tilting my head in disbelief. What's the big deal? She had no fondness for me. So she simply what? You were handed over to me? It was as if I hit a wall, the thought slipping away before I could articulate it. Maya recoiled. It wasn't quite that way. So, share your experience with me. She took a deep breath. Kayla and I have always shared a bond, yet our differences have always set us apart. Upon your initial encounter, she seemed disinterested, yet lacked the words to express it. For some reason, she chose to give me your number rather than being honest with you. Initially, I believed it was merely an error. However, as our conversation unfolded, I found myself drawn to you. I had feelings for you long before our paths crossed in reality. I gazed at her, my breath quickening with each heartbeat. She persevered. On the evening of our initial encounter, I realized I ought to have shared my thoughts with you. However, your arrival changed everything, and we truly enjoyed ourselves. And she paused, breathing out unsteadily. I kept reassuring myself that I would share it with you the next time we spoke. However, another date emerged. And yet another. And in an instant, the moment had passed. I shook my head and took a step back. What do you mean by too late? Honestly, I felt the need to share something with you, Garrett. Her voice trembled. I feared you might leave me behind. I released a sardonic laugh. So instead, you allowed me to fall for you under false pretenses? In what way is that an improvement? Maya seemed as though she longed to extend her hand toward me. Yet she chose not to. I was always honest about my feelings for you. That has always been genuine. I yearned to trust her. I truly did. Yet, my mind was consumed by the memories of each moment we had experienced together. Each caress. Each kiss. All that exists is founded on a fabrication. Or could it have been? I had lost all sense of certainty. I paused for a moment. I require some time for contemplation. She nodded, embracing herself with her arms. I comprehend. With that, I turned and left. The ultimate decision. For days, my thoughts were in disarray. I went through it all repeatedly, attempting to understand what emotions I was meant to experience. Deceived? Absolutely. Furious? Certainly. Yet, there was an additional layer to consider. For all that transpired, my emotions for her remained genuine. The Maya I was familiar with. The person with whom I had shared countless nights of conversation. The person who brought humor even in the darkest moments. The one I began to envision a future alongside. She was genuine. She existed in the truest sense. Yet, was she truly trustworthy? Will I ever be able to see her again without recalling the beginning of it all? I was unaware. 7 days passed, and then a message arrived. Maya, I realize I made mistakes, but I wouldn't change the fact that I met you. I truly wish I had shared the truth with you earlier. If you ever feel like chatting, I'm available. I gazed at the message for what felt like an eternity. At last, I set my phone aside and stepped away. Some experiences, regardless of their intensity, simply aren't destined to unfold. I can sense your thoughts. How could I simply turn my back and leave? Believe me, I pondered that very question countless times since that evening. In the solitude of my apartment, I find myself revisiting each moment, each conversation, every time her smile made me feel like I was the sole focus of her universe. What's even more frustrating? It continued to feel authentic. However, let me point this out. Regardless of my desire to embrace our connection, the reality was that it began with deception. And that's what I couldn't let go of. If Maya had been honest with me from the start, perhaps the outcome would have changed. Perhaps I might have been captivated by her in the same manner. Yet, she allowed me to think I was in a relationship with someone entirely different. She allowed me to become enamored with a portrayal of herself that was not completely authentic. And when someone treats you that way, it really plays with your mind. It prompts a deep examination of all that you know. Did anything truly exist? Did she ever consider sharing that with me? Or was she merely wishing I'd remain oblivious? Some might argue that forgiveness was the right path for me to take. She acted out of fear, driven by her genuine feelings for me, believing she had more time to express herself. I understand that completely. However, there is something else I am aware of. Beginning with a falsehood, regardless of your noble intentions, inevitably leads to consequences that cannot be avoided. To all who are observing this, I pose a question to you: what actions would you have taken? Would you have been able to forgive her? Would you have attempted to find a solution? Or would you have turned your back like I did? Honestly, I'm still uncertain if I chose wisely.